That was the start. Okay, so Lag B'Omer, what is it?
The way of the counting.
It's the counting. How do we get to Lag B'Omer?
You go down Main Street, turn left.
Thank you, okay, great. You said it's the way of the counting, so what is
The way of
Lag?
30.
30
Lamed, and then the log part, it's 33 is what it comes out to.
33, so it's the 33rd day of the Omer. By the way, yesterday was Pesach Sheni. Hopefully we're gonna get to that in our section, we're gonna talk a little bit about that. So, Lag B'Omer, what do we do and what happened on Lag B'Omer? Any thoughts on it? Any?
Who's the famous person that passed away and then every year people go to his gravesite?
Where is his gravesite?
In Eastern Europe.
Oh, no, that's Rabbi Nachman.
Yeah.
But Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai,
Galilee.
yeah, Meron, specifically, yes, near the Galil, who is the author of
Zohar.
Zohar, Kabbalistic thought, etc. It was the day of his passing. And he's also a famous Talmud scholar. And actually, at the beginning of the Talmud section that we're doing today on Pesach, we have a quote, something from him.
Well, he was a rabbi too, correct?
Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So, and anything else? How's it celebrated?
By hanging it out where he passed away, and there's like a transmission of receiving when you do that.
Okay.
Otherwise, bonfires is one typical.
Bonfires?
Isn't it considered if you go to his gravesite that you'll receive some extra?
Well, they say that anybody who goes on Lag B'Omer to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's grave will actually merit whatever it is he's requesting for by prayer.
Now, is that only men that do that?
No, women do as well. In fact, women are, there's a large area kind of that the guys are in, but specifically near the kever, there's a section for women.
There's a section, so there's a separation of the sexes?
In any Orthodox kind of
Yes.
sort of thing like that. Okay, so bonfires, what else? Anybody else remember? Bows and arrows. Why bows and arrows? There's a little piece that says, when we see a rainbow, it's God reminding us that God isn't sort of wiping us out in the flood. When there is a great tzaddik during a generation, they say that there are no rainbows in merit of the great tzaddik. When he died, there was apparently a rainbow. They say, B'nai Yisachar, which is a kind of obscure text, that when Moshiach appears, that the rainbow will actually change color. So, at any rate, let's read a little bit more about Lag B'Omer.
I suppose that there is relate to a rainbow.
Keshet.
Just
Keshet. So, there's also an interesting piece where the Tanya, Rabbi Shmuel Zalman talks about how when we use a bow, that the functional piece is that we draw it back towards our heart. We have to draw it back towards ourself to let it go. So it's kind of an interesting comment on Hod Shebahod, which is Lag B'Omer.
I have a problem
With a bunch of that.
with you do I would.
I thought that might be
Somehow.
the case.
And I'm basing my feelings on, if you go to the Baal Shem Tov's grave, or
There's actually
Rabbi Nachman,
the
or
Baal Shem Tov's grave. Actually, the Baal Shem Tov, apparently there's a whole story about him on Lag B'Omer where he did a parade with the children.
Right.
That there were the Cossacks who had gone to the Ukraine and were going to, pillage the town. And the people got out just in time, and they dwelled in caves while the Cossacks were looting and pilfering and whatever. And he took the kids And he said, don't worry, today is Lag B'Omer, and it's a mitzvah for us to be happy. So let's, do a little parade. They did a parade. The town was saved on that day, and they left and leaving all the stuff that they had pilfered from the homes. So anyway, that's the story about the Baal Shem Tov on Lag B'Omer. But
Okay,
yes,
so anyhow, to me, it is, when you go to that grave on special days for certain persons, and we tend to maybe elevate your position, and I thought we weren't supposed to do that. Because God here, and his story has it, maybe that's the reason we don't know where Moses' grave is.
all important, although some people find, there's an entire PowerPoint that we had done at some point in the past, with regard to the graves, the kevarim of the tzaddikim, and the practice of going and studying at the site as a constraint, kind of like a holy site for people to pilgrimage to. All right, so if you could look at the bottom, and let's just read a little bit about Lag B'Omer. It's on the back of this sheet, perhaps, this top one. At the bottom. Lag B'Omer is the 33rd day of the Omer, towards the bottom. This year,
The Talmud Lag B'Omer is the Jewish holiday of Passover, show all the plague graves to most of the disciples of the great sage Rabbi Akiva, because they didn't act respectfully towards each other. These weeks are therefore observed as a period of mourning, with various Jewish activities prescribed by law and custom. On Lag B'Omer, the death ceased. Thus, Lag B'Omer also carries the theme of the imperative to love and respect one's fellow.
okay, so Raya, if you could back up to the previous paragraph.
From Chabad.org, Lag B'Omer, the 33rd day of the Omer count this year, Thursday, May 10, 2012, is a festival day on the Jewish calendar. It is celebrated with outings, on which the children traditionally play with bows and arrows, bonfires, and other joyous events. Many visit the resting place in Meron, northern Israel, of the great sage and mystic Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, thank you, the anniversary of whose passing is on this day.
A little bit about him.
Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, who lived in the 2nd century of the Common Era, was the first to publicly teach the mystical dimension of the Torah known as the Kabbalah, and is the author of the basic work of Kabbalah, the Zohar. On the day of his passing, Rabbi Shimon instructed his disciples to mark the date as the day of my joy. The Hasidic, thank you, masters explain that the final day of a righteous person's earthly life marks the point at which all his deeds, teachings, and work achieve our culminating perfection and the zenith of their impact upon our lives. So each Lag B'Omer, we celebrate Rabbi Shimon's life and the revelation of the esoteric soul of Torah.
Okay, so, all right, and a little story about him. Dan, if you pick up a carob and a spring, carob tree and a spring. This comes from Shabbat 33b. It's got a little picture on the side.
Rabbi Judah, Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Shimon were sitting, and Judah, a son of proselytes, was sitting near them. Rabbi Judah commenced the discussion by observing, "How fine are the works of his people, the Romans. They have made streets, they have built bridges, they have erected baths."
Okay, so now you've got to notice exactly who was there. 4 people. And the first one, Judah is saying great things about the Romans. Rabbi Yossi is saying nothing. Okay, and then our protagonist, go ahead.
Rabbi Yossi was silent. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai responded, "All that they made for their own benefit. They built marketplaces to sell harlots in them, baths to rejuvenate themselves, bridges to levy tolls for them."
Okay, so Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai is saying really negative things about the Romans.
Judah, the son of the proselytes, went and related their talk, which reached the government. They decreed, "Judah, who exalted us, shall be exalted. Yosef, who was silent, shall be exiled to Sepphoris, and Shimon, who censored, shall be executed." Rabbi Shimon and his son went and hid themselves in the study hall, and his wife brought him bread and a mug of water, and they dined. When the decree became more severe, they went and hid in a cave. A miracle occurred, and a carob tree and a wellspring of water were created for them. They would remove their garments and sit up to their necks in sand. The whole day they studied. When it was time for prayers, they robed, covered themselves, and prayed, then put off their garments again so that they should not wear out. Thus they dwelt 12 years in the cave.
Okay, so 12 years in the cave, this is when he was working on all of the mystical teachings and all of that kind of stuff. Mike, you want to pick up Elijah the prophet?
Then Elijah the prophet came and stood at the entrance of the cave and exclaimed, "Who will inform the son of Yochai that the emperor is dead and the decree annulled?" So they emerged. Seeing a man plowing and sowing, they exclaimed, "They forsake eternal life and engaged in temporary life. Whatever they cast their eyes upon was immediately incinerated."
Okay, so Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai and his son have been hanging out in the cave for 12 years and studying these mystical insights. And the first thing they do is they see a guy plowing and sowing, and as a result, they're upset. They're not seeing what they think is the best thing to be done, which is studying Torah.
A heavenly echo came forth and announced, "Have you emerged to destroy my world? Return to your cave." So they returned and lived there another 12 months, saying, "The punishment of the wicked is limited to 12 months. The heavenly echo then came forth and said, "Go forth from your cave."
Okay, so they were there for 12 years, they came out, burned up what they saw, and then had to go back into the cave for another 12 months. And then they're crying out to God, saying, "God, even the wicked only have 12 months, that they have to stay in Gehenna. What's up?" So the Bat Kol, or the voice from heaven, says, "Go forth." So now wherever Rabbi Eliezer harmed with his look, Rabbi Shimon healed. Said Rabbi Shimon to his son, "My son, you and I are sufficient for the world." On the eve of Shabbat, before sunset, they saw an old man holding 2 bundles of myrtle and running at twilight. "What are these for?" they asked him. "They are in honor of the Sabbath. But one should suffice for you." And he said, the old man said, "One is for Zachor and one is for Shemor. One is for remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. One is for keep the Sabbath day." So, therefore, and which is also another comment about why we have 2 candlesticks that we often use on Shabbat. So Rabbi Shimon to his son, "See how precious are the mitzvot of the people of Israel. Thereupon your minds were put at ease." So, there's your Talmud before the Talmud. That's a little taste before Talmud.
So 2 candles are related to
Shemor v'Zachor. Yeah.
Not to the
That's
problem.
one of the explanations. One doesn't actually have to use 2, but often we do. And some people use 7, or 3, or 5. In fact, I've got Holocaust Bas Yisrael, if you want to look at the book, on some of that halachot, I'm happy to share that with you.
And then some people then forgot to light the Shabbat candles, would light 3 for the rest of their lives, or depending on the.
If they say put on another mitzvah to put on another candle, then. Okay, so let's move into our text.
Get it for you, Mike.
I didn't want it that close.
On page 170. So we're going to move through this piece, which is kind of finishing up what we did last week. Still looking at the laws of Passover, what are they, what should they be, the issue about Hoshea the prophet and his relationship with his wife, mimicking God and Israel and that issue. So moving on, Rabbi Yochanan, page 170, he's going to talk a little bit about leadership. And then we're going to move into Pesach Sheni, or the second Passover. Do you know where? Yeah, Rabbi Yochanan, so it's like the 3rd paragraph. Yep, that's it.
It buries those who exercise it. There is not a single prophet whose activities did not span the reigns of 4 kings. As it is said, the prophecies of Hosea, the son of Amos, in the reigns of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah. Rabbi Yohanan said, "Why did Jeroboam the son of Joash deserved to be numbered with the kings of Judah. Oh, because he refused to accept slander against the prophet Amos. We know he was included, for it is written.
So this is their proof text as to
Yes.
why this guy was included.
So here's something from Isaiah. The word of the Lord that came to Isaiah son of Beeri in the reigns of kings, Uzziah, Yotam, Ahaz, Hezekiah of Judah, and the reign of King Jeroboam, son of Joash of Israel. Okay. We know too that he rejected slander, for it's written. Amaziah, the priest of Bethel, sent this message to King Jeroboam of Israel. Amos is conspiring against you. For Amos had said, Jeroboam shall die by the sword. He reflected. God forbid that he said that. For if he had indeed said it, what can I do, seeing that God had told him to say so?
Okay, so they're essentially elevating prophets in this little clip here.
They last as long as 4 kings. Their life spent to the last one.
Right, right.
Rabbi Elazar said, even when he is angry, the Holy One, blessed be he, is mindful of mercy, as it is said, I will not continue, I will show mercy to the house of Israel. Rabbi Yossi ben Hanina derived the same from the end of the verse, but I will surely forgive them.
Okay, so essentially these are kind of written in the negative, but they're idioms, and so they're saying that God is merciful, and here's a couple of proof texts.
The light was a literal 65 more. The light was a literal translation of an idiom, meaning I will not continue to forgive.
So the translation is, but I will surely forgive them. So, Monica.
Rabbi Elijah said, moreover, the Holy One, blessed be he, exiled Israel among the nations. Only the proselytes might be added to the number. As it is said, I will sow her in the land. No one sows a seah unless he intends to harvest several curves. Rabbi Yohanan inferred the same from the end of the verse, and take lo ruhama back in favor, and I will say to lo ima, you are my people. Rabbi Yohanan said in the name of Rabbi Simeon ben Yohai.
Okay, there's our guy, right?
Right. From the story. What is the meaning of the verses? Do not inform on a slave to his master, lest he curse you and you incur guilt. There is a breed of men that brings a curse on its fathers and brings no blessing to its mothers. How does do not inform follow from brings a curse on its fathers and brings no blessing to its mothers? It signifies that even a generation that brings curses on its fathers and no blessings on its mothers should refrain from slandering a slave to his master. This is what we learn from Hosea.
Okay, and looking at 67 there, the footnote.
Hosea got into trouble for slandering Israel, even though they had indeed sinned. Rashi.
So Rashi is saying that even the prophet who goes about doing their prophetly job, telling these people have turned away, is still, there's a problem there, because at some level it's slandering the people of Israel.
Rabbi Oshaya said, what is the meaning of the expression, his gracious deliverance of Israel? The Holy One, blessed be he, acted generously towards Israel by scattering them among the nations.
So they're looking at this as a positive, because in footnote 68,
Literally a secretarian, the context makes it clear that it is,
68.
forgive me, the word translated deliverance derives from a root that could mean scatter. Rabbi Oshaya's point was that Israel would be more vulnerable if they were under the control of just one nation.
So that there was a blessing even in this scattering of us among the nations.
As a Roman said to Rabbi Hyena, we are better than you. It is written of you and for Job and all Israel, stayed there for 6 months until he had killed off every male in Edom. But you have been within our power for many years, and we have done nothing to you. He replied, "May I get one of my disciples to respond?" Rabbi Oshai joined conversation with the Roman and said, "That is because you don't know what to do. You cannot destroy us all, since we are not all within your territory. And were you to destroy just those who were within your territory, people would call you a lame power." But the Roman eagle replied, by the Roman eagle, replied the other, "We go out and we come in," with that. So,
Okay, so Rabbi Oshaya had apparently said what was on the Romans' mind. Sort of, yeah, you're right, we haven't destroyed you because part of the people live under the Roman rule, part of them don't. And they were concerned, Oshaya says in footnote 70, plays on the Roman rivalry with Persia. So they couldn't wipe all of us out. They could, because they didn't have the right, they didn't have all of the territory.
Some of the moderns would say that the diaspora, the dispersion, the Jews actually preserve us.
Right, which is, comes from this piece in Talmud, that the dispersion was actually a help.
I never,
Had really considered that as a positive, right?
No, I consider it a positive, kind of hard to know to, but I first heard it from American communists in Israel. This was an old plan, and there's a couple, so they will never settle in Israel. Why? Because we are going to remain with those people who pack the suitcases every time when the life gets hard. And they were very probably whatever the idea that brought it, but I never thought that there is a connection in Talmud to this idea.
Okay, Jane, pick up.
Rabbi Chia taught, "What is meant by God understands the way to it. He knows its place. The Holy One, blessed be He, knows that Israel could not withstand the harsh Roman decrees, so He exiled them to Babylon." Rabbi Eleazar said, "The Holy One, blessed be He, exiled Israel to Babylon because it is as low as Sheol. As it is said, from Sheol itself will I save them, redeem them from very death." Rabbi Hanina said, "He exiled them to Babylon because the language of Babylon is close to that of Torah." Rabbi Yohanan said, "Because he wanted to send them back to their maternal home. This is like a man who is angry with his wife. Where will he send her? Back to her mother." Rabbi Alexandri likewise said, "Three returned to their place of origin: Israel, the silver of Egypt, the writings on the tablets of stone that Moses brought down from Mount Sinai."
Okay, so this is kind of Rabbi Alexandria is trying to bring like a positive notion. Israel is going to return to its place, just like these other two things, the silver of Egypt and the writing on the tablets. So
Israel, as we have said, the Egyptian silver, as it is written, in the 5th year of King Rehoboam, King Shishak of Egypt marched against Jerusalem and carried off the treasures of the house of the Lord, and the writing on the tablets, as it is written, "And I smashed them before your eyes, and it was taught." The stones were smashed, but the letters flew heavenwards. The sugya is rounded off with humorous anecdote, followed by reassuring homilies.
So the anecdote that is kind of cute is the next one by Ola, and then a few more homilies. So,
I'm confused.
okay. We're talking about exile, non-exile, under the general topic of Pesach.
No. Let me go back up here where it says, Rabbi Eliezer said the Holy One must be exile Israel to Babylon because it is low.
As Sheol. So it's as low as basically hell.
For Jews, I saved them and redeemed them from the very death. And then in the next sentence,
What he's doing is bringing a proof text to prove that God's going to bring us back. So from Sheol, I will save them.
okay, so the Babylonian language is similar to Aramaic or Hebrew because in the next paragraph it says it's close to, the language is close to that of the Torah.
Right. That was his Hanina's ruling, or thought, I should say.
The language is not similar to
Aramaic, not Aramaic.
Persian is not.
Yeah, I'm not referring to Persian because
It would be Babylon. So his
Because that-
Babylonian language Semitic language. I suppose the only argument there is it's closer than perhaps,
Because
Chinese, but it's been sent to wherever.
It's a pretty
some
big
place.
branch. Semitic languages is a pretty big
Yeah,
branch.
because the language of Persian is basically more modern language
Sure.
as opposed to,
Whatever the Semitic
Sweet,
languages they were
right.
speaking at the time of Babylon.
thank you for getting that out of my mouth, I appreciate it. That was-
It was in there, it was in there.
Right.
Okay, so who's up with Ullah said?
You are.
Is that where we're at? Because that's fine.
Well, that's what he's saying. He's saying that's fine.
Ullah said they were exiled to Babylon so they might eat dates and study Torah. When Ullah arrived in Pumbedita, they offered him a tray of dates. He asked, "How many trays of dates can you get for a zuz?" 3, he replied. 3, they replied. He explained, "A basket full of honey for a zuz, and you Babylonians don't study Torah?" So, he's amazed at the great prices. He's loving this great food. However, during the night, the dates troubled him. The next morning, he proclaimed, "A basket of deadly poison goes for a zuz in Babylon." Despite that, they learned Torah. All right, so Rabbi Eliezer also said, what is the meaning of the verse? "And many nations shall go and say, let us ascend to the Lord's mountain, to the house of Jacob's God." From Isaiah. Why did the God of Jacob and not the God of Abraham or Isaac? Not Abraham, to whom God was like a mountain, because on the mount of the Lord there was a vision from Genesis, nor like Isaac, to whom God was like a field. As it says, and Isaac went out to meditate in the field. But like Yaakov, to whom God was home, as it said, and he called the place of the home Beit El, house of God. Okay, so Rabbi Yochanan said the ingathering of exiles is as great as the day of heaven and earth when they were created, as it is said. The people of Judah, the people of Israel, shall assemble together and appoint one head over them, and they shall rise from the ground, for marvelous shall be the day of Jezreel. Okay, so see the note there? Day, right? We're going to do a Gezer Shava here. And it is written, and it was evening and it was morning, one day. So why does Rabbi Yochanan say that the gathering of exiles is as great as the time of creation?
Mhm.
Why? Somebody spit it back for me. Tell me why.
Because on the first day, God created the heavens and the earth.
Okay,
Just using the word day, that's all?
that's it. And Gezer Shavos are kind of interesting. Let's move to,
And there's special rules for using Gezer Shabbos.
right, which means for Gezer Shava, you must have tradition of the sages. You can't pull a Gezer Shava and say, oh, the word this over here and the word this over here are the same. Therefore, these two verses match. Gezer Shavas have to have tradition. So Gezer Shava, let's move to rules of interpretation. In the introduction, XLI. So under rules of interpretation, the 3rd century scholars listed rules they believed to have been used by the Tanaim in their interpretation of Scripture. 7 hermeneutical rules, in this case they were called Medot, are attributed to Hillel, 13 to Rabbi Ishmael, 32 to Rabbi Yossi the Galilean. They cover reasonableness, rhetoric, grammar, and have points of resemblance with the ways in which Stoics interpreted Homer and the Romans interpreted legal texts. So, do you guys see what page we're on? XLI?
Yeah, no.
Let's move to Gezer Shava.
Sooner or later, I'll find it.
So, XLI.
Similar combinations, English, analogy.
Right, so it's an analogy. So what it says here is if a word or phrase occurs in 2 separate passages, an analogy may be drawn for the application of the law in both cases. So I'm going to give you examples. So when you've got 2 words, in this case, these 2 verses have the same word which is Yom, day. So that's why we have Rabbi Yochanan saying, the gathering of exiles is as great as creation. Because he's pulling the word day out of both verses. The one from Hosea and the one from Genesis. You guys catch that?
Yeah.
See where we're at? We're using the word day. Here we're going to see another Gezer Shabbat here coming up. All right, let's move on to chapter 9 for Pesach Sheni. You with me?
And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the Israelite people, saying, When any of you or your posterity who are defiled by a corpse or on a long journey will offer a Passover sacrifice to the Lord, they shall offer it in the second month, on the 14th day of the month, at twilight.
Okay, so
instead of
Pesach Sheni
first
was yesterday.
Yesterday, I just said it was yesterday.
That's funny, you didn't recognize your own ringtone?
It's a new phone.
That's funny, she didn't recognize it. She was looking at you, Rev, thought it was you.
I don't even know how to turn it off yet.
That's funny, you thought it was Rev. You're looking at her like, that's a good one.
So, all right, on to the next sentence there. So this is some of the
The
rules.
second month, as opposed to the first
Pesach
month.
Sheni.
Right,
Yes.
like a-
Lo Pesach Echad.
Second month, on the 14th day of the month, right? They shall eat, so it's exactly 1 month after
Mhm.
Pesach.
Which was yesterday.
They shall eat it with unleavened bread with bitter herbs, and they shall not leave any of it over until morning. They shall not break a bone of it. They shall offer it in strict accord with the law of the Passover sacrifice.
Okay, so that last piece there, they shall offer it in strict accord with the law of the Passover sacrifice. That is going to be our jumping off point for how do you celebrate Pesach Sheni?
Which was yesterday.
Also, we don't have to do it today.
Because the sacrifice,
Also, the sacrifice is the same as the first Passover and second Passover. The feast of unleavened bread is not repeated. There are consequently several differences between the two celebrations.
So do all of these laws apply or do only some of the laws apply? What do we have to do on Pesach Sheni? This is what this
Eat a piece of
chapter-
matzah.
This is a custom. So is to eat matzah. But there are additional pieces and we're going to apply a different principle.
Anybody want a piece of chocolate matzah, speaking of
Actually,
which?
that's not chocolate.
There's
It's
no
chocolate.
chocolate.
Oh, that
So-
got eaten up?
The chocolate must have disappeared on Shabbat.
That's good.
So
She was probably
It
hoping.
might have been originally
Would you like a
separate festivals,
Monica?
the Passover and the feast of unleavened bread are separate. Just connected. So
Okay, so here we're going to use a different method from our page that we just looked at, XLI, which is detailed to general, prat to klal. So we had the Gezer Shabbat that we dealt with.
Which is when two different things are relating to a meaning, to give it a synopsis.
When there are, it
References.
says X in this verse, it says X in that verse. The verses are completely
word.
different, maybe different pieces in Tanakh.
But they have the same
Somehow-
connotation.
There's going to be a relationship. And
Like Hosea
we
and
have to
Genesis.
have our sages tell us when it's appropriate. So the word yom and the word yom.
Okay.
So the gathering of exiles is as great as creation. So that was our Gezer Shabbat. So now we have another one, prat, the pratit, to klal. So detailed to general. And remember, these hermeneutical principles are just methods of interpreting, methods that the sages used.
Prata petite.
Prat to klal.
it's in the
Okay.
XLI.
It's
Okay,
again,
I'll have to go back there.
Same page, yeah.
Yeah, if you want to go back. So, All right, so,
In essence, it's a way that they're using to prove their argument. Whether it's right or wrong, but that's a
it's a
method.
method of, it's a proof method, right?
Now the people look at the several ancient texts, they see the same word used in two different locations. And they arrive at the precise meaning of the word. Multiple
There's
people
always
will
tomorrow.
Here it's the opposite. You say the phrases are the way just because the words are the same.
They're drawing out a law based upon the fact that
Just
a single word is the same. But generally, you're right, if we have this word that we're not real familiar with in this context, and this word again in another context, these two words must somehow be related. But in this case, we're gonna draw out a meaning. So these two words match, so there must be some meaning, okay? Gathering of exiles, creation. They're both great and marvelous. And we connect it with the word yom. Okay. And how many other places could we find the word yom in Tanakh?
Oh.
Right, lots.
Oh.
Right, okay. All right, so now we're going to move into Pesach Sheni here. Is it these? Or did you read? Okay, Mishnah?
What is the difference between the first Passover and the second? On the first, hametz may not be seen or found in your possession. On the second Passover, you may have both leavened and unleavened bread with you in the house.
Okay, shoot, didn't want to have to do that again. And
On the first,
halal.
halal must be recited as the Passover sacrifice is eaten. On the second, halal need not be recited as the Passover is eaten.
And halal is what? We've got a footnote on it.
I'm sorry, did I miss it?
It's okay.
On
72.
73.
Thank you. Psalms 113:18.
Okay, 113 and 118 is the actual definition of halal. And when is halal said? When are these psalms often said? Yeah.
But when?
They are often done in services, not at the Seder, because we've got a Haggadah. The halal may be said at the end, depending upon which Haggadah you're using.
Oh,
So yes is the answer. Yes, during a Chag. During a holiday is often when it is recited. Halal is done on festive occasions, just generally speaking. So, yeah, some traditional Haggadot will have. So, and for us, did we do Hallel? And if so, how did we do it? Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Oh, that's funny.
So that was our method of making sure we could able to among other things. But for us, we give a nod to tradition and say Hallel is often said, but we're not going to repeat in Hebrew these 5 psalms.
So hallelujah, the part of the root of the word itself is just
It's
right
praise.
there.
Praise.
Mhm.
Hallel, praise. Okay, so, all right, Raya, go ahead.
So on both halal, I hope I'm not repeating, on both, halal must be recited as the sacrifice is made. On both, the Passover is eaten together with unleavened bread and bitter herbs, and both override the Sabbath.
Okay, so we dealt with in the last chapter what it overrides the Shabbat in terms of how do you carry a knife, all of that. So that was last week. Very interesting. How did they carry a knife?
I wasn't here. What?
Oh,
On a goat.
On a goat.
Oh,
On a sheep.
On
in
a
its fleece, in its
before
horns.
it was
my.
consecrated.
Before it was consecrated, that's
Whoa.
right. Good. And really, once you collect a lot of these little details of life, it's so fascinating to have these lovely little conversations about how do you carry a knife, right?
I give it to my cat.
It causes us to remember these pieces because they're such odd, quirky little things.
They are.
Okay, so moving on to Gemara.
the rabbis taught they shall offer it in strict accord with the law of the Passover sacrifice. Scripture speaks of those mitzvot that apply to the body of the Passover lamb or kid. How do we know that it speaks of mitzvot that applies to the body? Because it is written, they shall eat it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. Does it speak also of mitzvot that do not apply to the body? No, since it states, they shall not break a bone of it, just as the prohibition of breaking bones is a mitzvah, but that applies specifically to the body, so all mitzvot that apply to the body are included.
So the body of the lamb, that's what we're talking about
Right.
specifically here, the body of the lamb. So, Isi ben Yehuda? Go ahead, Mona. Finish it.
Okay, Izzy Ben Yehuda says, you can infer from the words they shall offer it that Scripture speaks only to mitzvot that apply to the body.
Shut up.
A teacher commented, does it speak also of mitzvot that do not apply to the body of the Passover? But surely you just said, Scripture speaks of those mitzvot that apply to the body, so what is the question? The Baraita means, seeing that Scripture says, they shall eat it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. You can see that they shall offer it is not limited to the lamb or kid alone. I might therefore think that this is like a prat, followed by a kalal, in which case the kalal would broaden the prat and perhaps include all aspects of Passover. The Baraita wants to tell you that this is not the case.
Okay, so what is prat?
XLI.
That's-
Specific and general, is that it?
Specific.
The kalal is general.
Okay.
Correct. So if we work through this one more time, I might therefore think that this is like detailed followed by general.
Yeah.
In which case, the general would broaden the detail, and perhaps all would apply, but really no, that's not the case. So they're going to tell you why these little things mean that you don't have to do the entire Pesach over again. You only need to, at this point, you only need to nod in terms of eating matzah, it's custom, but you don't have to go through all of, getting rid of the unleavened, bringing in unleavened bread, sending out, all your leavening.
So
blah,
what
blah,
this
blah.
is really an argument for it, is find an excuse to miss Pesach. Go on an ocean trip, and go away from home, get on a wagon train, go across the country. And then when it comes around a month later, hey, we don't
It's
have to
it's not so difficult, right? There's not so many rules,
Right.
you just have to deal with this. Okay, but we know from whence this comes in Tanakh, we know that people really wanted to celebrate, but they were tamei. They had to. So since they were not so poor, they were not, quote, ritually pure, they couldn't do the shechting, they couldn't actually have their Passover Seder, but they wanted to. So they said, okay, 30 days from now, when Moses asked God, that's how you deal with the situation. Okay, so on the indented section there,
What use does Isi ben Yehuda make of the phrase, they shall not break a bone of it? He requires it to establish that no difference is made between a bone that contains marrow and one that doesn't. What use do the other rabbis make of the phrase, they shall offer it? They require it to establish that a second Passover sacrifice may not be slaughtered for just one person, but one should try as hard as possible to get others to share it.
okay, offer being singular as opposed to plural. And they pull apart each word to sort of inspect it and see what value it is in the argument. Okay.
The rabbis taught they shall offer it in strict accordance with the law of the Passover sacrifice. Do you think that just as on the first Passover, chametz may not be seen or found in your possession, so on the second, chametz may not be seen or found in your possession? This is not so, since Scripture says, they shall eat it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs.
Okay, so the footnote there,
The arguments that follow are based on the notion that if Torah made a general statement in strict accordance with the law of the Passover, but then specified details such as eating it with unleavened bread, this limits the generality of the first statement so that not all laws for the first Passover apply to the second.
okay, so there is your strict piece, and that's how we get to the point where we know we don't have to do everything.
Right.
We have to do a few things.
We can eat leavened bread with unleavened and bitter herbs. But this would exclude only positive commandments other than the one specified. How do I know that negative commandments too, other than the one specified, are to be excluded? Because it is written, they shall not leave any of it over until morning. I would infer from this that only a negative commandment joined to a positive one is excluded. How do I know that even pure negative commandments other than the one specified are to be excluded? Because it is written, they shall not break a bone of it. To sum up, just as the inclusions are specified, one positive commandment, one negative joined to a positive, and one pure negative, so every other positive, negative joined to a positive, and pure negative commandment is excluded.
We're just gonna keep on moving.
Okay? What then is included by way of comparison with unleavened bread and bitter herbs? That the second Passover, like the first, must be roasted in fire. What is excluded? That it is not necessary to get rid of leavening agents. Perhaps we should argue the other way around. No, since it is preferable to include mitzvot that apply to the body of the Passover. What is included by way of comparison with they shall not leave any of it over until morning? That the meat of the second Passover, like that of the first, may not be removed beyond its boundary. What is excluded? That it is not forbidden for chametz to be seen or found in one's possession. Perhaps we should argue the other way around. No, since it is preferable to include mitzvot that apply to the body of the Passover. What is included? By way of comparison with, they shall not break a bone of it. That the meat of second Passover, like that of the first, may not be eaten raw. What is excluded? You shall not offer the blood of my sacrifice while you have leaven in your possession. Perhaps we should argue the other way around. No, since it is preferable to include mitzvot that apply to the body of the Passover.
All right, so, Gael, would you like to pick up the italicized section?
The final chapter, even though I'm totally confused.
You know,
What
sometimes
is excluded?
If you glean just one nugget, then you'll eventually have a whole packet. Then it'll be easier to add more marbles in that.
You know, in truth, I've heard more straight words come out of the Congress.
Now we know you're stretching it.
The final chapter is devoted to the Passover Eve meal, known as the Seder order. This is a family feast at which the Exodus from Egypt is recalled and reflected upon. The book containing the order of service is called Haggadah, telling the story. A word derived from
Higata.
in a verse, and you must tell.
You shall,
And
yeah,
you
you
shall
shall, that's like
tell
imperative, yeah, you must.
your son
must.
on that day. The opening Mishnah is concerned with a provision for the poor, for there cannot be a true joyful occasion unless rich and poor alike are able to participate.
So, and this is often true even when we have, besides Passover, besides that, we often either invite the poor or we give money to mazon. If a couple get married, my usual recommendation is that 3% of the costs go to some sort of tzedakah, because there's no joyful with this without providing something to the poor. So, and then the next section has to do with superstitions.
How can the rabbi set a requirement for 4 cups of wine, a double of doubles, to accompany the Seder at a time when there was widespread superstition that doubles, in a particular twins, were unlucky or dangerous? The rabbis did not directly challenge the superstition, but limited its impact to unlikely circumstances or to particular susceptible people who their overall attitude is somewhat skeptical through a range of views.
Right, so we're going to deal with this issue of doubles, or double's a problem. Usually when we do something and it's a mitzvah, how many times do we have to do, like sometimes, I mean obviously we have to do mitzvah once, but if we're going to do something and create like a habit, how many times do we have to
3 times, isn't it?
3 times. So, and at some points in our long ancient history, if you only did it twice, there was a problem. And we're going to learn a little bit about the thought process of, 1,500 years ago. All right, Mishnah. No one should eat on the eve of Passover from the time of the afternoon prayer until darkness. Even the poorest Israelite should not eat until he reclines, even if he is so poor that he normally depends on the soup kitchen for his meals. They should give him not less than the 4 required cups of wine, together with the full Passover feast. Well, the Gemara is going to come and explain and expand. They should not give him less than the 4 required cups of wine. Not that the rabbis institute something that might lead to danger. Does not a Baraita teach a person should not eat twice, nor drink twice, nor have sex twice? Rav Nachman said, the 4 Seder cups are all right, since Scripture says it's a night when the Lord watches. Okay, so protection. A night when you are protected from demons. Rabbah said, the cup of blessing combines with others for good, not for bad. Ravina said, the rabbis instituted 4 cups as a sign of freedom. Each is a mitzvah in its own right, so therefore they are not doubles. Oh, this piece, nor have sex twice. Why not? Surely having sex a second time is a separate decision. A completely different quote, change of mind. Rather than setting out to do a double, Abaye said, what the Baraita means to say is a person should not eat twice, drink twice, and have sex even once, in case he is weakened and rendered susceptible to harm occasioned by the eating or drinking a double.
It is interesting, note 80. Look at 80.
A change of mind. This is contrary to Robert's prescription for producing male offspring. Right. So there's actually plenty of Talmud that talks about how do you get a boy, how do you get a girl, in terms of the sex piece.
So one of the places Talmud made some errors.
Well, and you can read all of this with kind of a, an interesting side note of what our ancestors thought about. So
it's very interesting. It does tell you a lot about the timing.
exactly. And especially in Babylon, all of that.
The
right.
superstitions that people carried with them for years and years. It's like putting a red ribbon by baby crib to ward off evil spirits.
That's right. Leaving that out.
And all that good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, the advice of how to produce certain sexual baby is rampant in Israel. Because
We still have certain segulas and that kind of thing. All right, so the rabbis taught if anyone drinks double, his blood is on his head because he's responsible for his own behavior. Rabbi Yehuda said, when does this apply? If he didn't take fresh air. So in other words, see the street, get up and out and come back. But if he's taking fresh air, it's all right to drink a second time. Rav Ashi said, I saw Rav Hanina Bar Bibi go outside after each cup. The danger only applies if he intends to set off on a journey, but not if he's staying home. Rabbi Zera said, sleeping is like setting off on a journey. Rav Papa said, so in other words, you could sleep in between cups. All right, Rav Papa said, going to relieve oneself is like setting off on a journey. Okay. These are all ways to avoid the problem. But is it really all right if he's staying home? Did Rava count walls in order to keep tally of the number of cups he drank and avoid doubles? So at least that's Rashi's opinion of why Rava counted walls. I can think of other reasons to count walls, but anyway. And when Abaye drank 1 cup, his mother held 2 cups ready in her hands to ensure he would drink 3 rather than 2. And likewise, when Rav Nachman bar Yitzhak drank 2 cups, his servant held 1 ready, and when he drank 1, his servant held 2 ready, even though they were staying home. Okay, Abaye's mother died in childbirth. He regarded the nurse who brought him up as his mother, the Talmud. And she passed on to him numerous remedies as well as superstitions. It's different for an important person like Rava or Nachman bar Yitzhak, since demons are more likely to be out to get him. Ula says doubles doesn't even apply to 10 cups. So Yehudi, you want to pick up
In
this?
saying this, Ula follows his usual line for Ula, so some say it was taught in the Baraita, said the sages instituted the custom of drinking 10 cups in the house of mourning. If doubles applied to 10 cups, how could the sages have introduced a custom that might be dangerous?
Okay, so now we're going to go from 10 on down.
But doubles does apply to 8 cups. Rahilda and Barahana both said keys, that is 7 joins for good, not for bad, so 8 is not harmful, but doubles does apply to 6 cups.
Okay, so where are they getting these words in quotes here? Peace, grace, and protect. They come from the priestly blessing. So, and it has to do with the order that they're in. So if you could read footnote 85 here. that'd be fine.
Peace is the seventh and the last word in the final sentence of this blessing. Numbers. Grace is the fifth and last word in the middle sentence. Protect is the third and the last word in the first sentence. Rashi and Rashba.
Okay, so and then back up here to,
Rabba and Rav Yosef both said, grace, there is 5 joints for good or for bad. So 6 is not harmful. But doubles does apply to 4 cups. Abba and Rabba both said, protect, there is 3 joints good, not for bad, so 4 is not harmful. In the same case, Rabba followed his habit for Rabba bade farewell to his students with 4 cups, even though one of them, Rabba Bar Levi, was harmed. He took no account of this, saying it was because he kept badgering me at my lectures. Rav Yosef said, the demon Joseph told me that Ashmedai, king of the demons, is in charge of all doubles, and that as a king, it cannot be said of him that he harms anyone. Ashmedai, Ashmid is to destroy. This is his name.
well,
A destroyer.
king of the demons, but since he's a king, he therefore cannot destroy.
So
This is their thinking, exactly. And they're gonna bring you a proof text, so.
others report this is in the opposite sense, that to the contrary, as a king, he is irascible and does what he likes. Since the king may break down fences to make the road for himself, and no one can stop him. 86. Saint Eugene.
And but Rav Papa has to come up with another way of looking at it.
The demon Joseph said to me, demon Joseph, okay.
And who knew that that was a name, but yeah.
We demons kill for 2, but we don't kill for 4. Because harm for 2, whether the double was deliberate or accidental. For 4, it was harm if the double was accidental. But not if it was deliberate. If someone carelessly allowed a double to happen, what remedy does he have? He should hold his right thumb with his left hand.
Okay, so this is how you get out of it. All right, ready? Hold your right thumb in your left hand and
his right
left.
and say you.
Left thumb and right hand. Okay, so right thumb,
Well,
left
try it.
hand.
Try
and
holding
thumb,
your
right
left,
thumb.
and how are you, do you do at the same time?
Hold.
So you have to go like this?
No. Left and right, right and left.
Okay.
Okay, all right, so now we got it, and then you say,
Yeah, say.
you and I make 3.
You and I make 3. If he hears the voice say you and I make 4, he should say you and I make 5. If he says you and I make 6, he should say you and I make 7. That happened once, and when they got to 101, a demon popped out.
Or escaped.
Escaped.
So now you know how to deal with all this, right?
Oh, that's funny, the next paragraph's even
If
funnier.
you just stop and close your eyes and think about it, you see a sandbox with a bunch of kids sitting around. If you do this, I do this, and that, and the other, it's what it sounds like.
Abraham said, the chief sorceress once told me that if you meet sorcerers, you should say, I should have your torn baskets in your mouth, or sorcerer. May I hear with which you conjure be turned out on the roll of fear, temptation.
Yeah, right. So apparently there was popular.
Right. And it's from Greek culture. And the crumbs you do magic with blow away. May your poison be scattered and made a big blow of fresh saffron out of your hands, or sorcerers. As long as heaven cared for me, and I cared for myself, and you cared for me, and I didn't come among you. Now that I have come among you, I know that you have come towards me, and I have not taken care of myself. 89. This translation follows Rashbam, who cites Ezekiel on the false prophetesses.
Okay, so then they're not really sure,
Where
you
this
know, in
came
terms
from.
of the translation of the text. All right, fair enough. Raya.
In the West, they are not particular about doubles. Rav Dimi of Nehardea was particular even about the number of marks for measurements on the wine barrels. It once happened that they came out to an even number and the barrel burst.
Okay, perhaps this is more realistic, this next paragraph.
The principle of the matter is that if anybody is attentive to doubles, the demons are attentive to him. If he is not attentive to doubles, the demons. So doubles and demons are one and the same, right?
Well,
Or
only if one is making themselves vulnerable, arguably,
Okay.
to do two of whatever. So if you do 3, 7, 9, odd numbers somehow are not a problem. But this is a superstition done.
Okay.
And then again, you know, if you're doing this and you say, what was it? You and I make 3, right? And if you hear a voice that says anything, I think that there's a problem. But that's just me saying. Okay, just saying.
So if he is not attentive to doubles, the demons don't bother with him.
Exactly.
Even so, one ought to take care. When Rav Demi came, he said, 2 eggs, 2 walnuts, 2 cucumbers, and 2 of the other things are forbidden as law of Moses from Sinai. However, the rabbis didn't know what he meant by the other thing, so they forbade all doubles on account of the other thing.
Right, okay, so here under this circumstance, they're saying doubles really aren't important because it had to do with something else.
Where's consistency?
Oh, this whole thing is about doubles, is that the
No,
question?
there's no consistency.
But they are-
Because most recipes for challah require 2 eggs.
Okay,
Look, my mother.
so
And
did you
2
see that
challahs on
previous
Shabbat.
paragraph? If you're not attentive, then you don't have to worry about it, so.
Now, when we said that 10, 8, 6, or 4 don't count as doubles, this was in connection with demons, but for sorcery, we have to worry about large numbers. There was an incident with a man who divorced his wife. She went and married an innkeeper. The ex-husband used to go there every day to drink wine. But though she tried sorcery on him, it didn't succeed, as he always took care to avoid doubles. One day he drank a lot and lost count. Up to 16, he kept a clear hand from the Lord. But after that, he was confused and no longer careful. The innkeeper turned him out when he reached a double. On his way, he met an Arab who said to him, "I see a dead man walking here." As he continued on his way, he caught hold of a palm tree. The tree cried out, and the man expired. Rav Avara said doubles don't apply to dishes or to loaves of bread.
See, there you go.
There's the hollow question. The principle is doubles don't apply to things completed by people. Among things that are naturally complete, you must take care with food. Doubles don't apply to ends. Doubles don't apply to someone who changes his mind. Doubles don't apply to guests. Doubles don't apply to women unless she's an important woman. Rav Hayina, the son of Rabbi Joshua said, asparagus wine combines for good, not for bad.
Now see, I have a hard time buying that one.
Ravina said, in the name of Rav, one should go to the stricter side in the case of doubt about doubles. Some say he said to the more lenient side.
All right, so we're gonna leave it there.
Okay.
I'm just not sure that asparagus wine combines for good,
That's
just in
because-
general.
that's
I have a
because
hard time with that.
Because you don't like asparagus
I can't
wine.
even imagine what
You-
asparagus wine might taste
You're
like.
pronouncing
Thank
it
you all
wrong.
very much.
You're pronouncing it wrong.
Asparagus.
No, it's asparagus.